Hello, welcome to Show Studio Head to Head. We're back talking about men's fashion. Sorry, first of all, I have to say I'm Mimma Viglezio and I'm here with
Stephen Jones.
Fantastic, Stephen Jones. Thanks for being here, Steve.
Lovely to be here.
So we're continuing our series of men's wear, and this time we're moving to Milan. So the second week of the calendar. Milan is expected to be, you know, it happens after London, and it's usually a cultural shock because Milan is expected to be more commercial, more normal, and it didn't disappoint this year by being more commercial and more normal as expected. In a way that maybe this year, for me at least, was probably a little bit too much, to the risk of becoming not relevant enough for a whole fashion week. I don't even know if it's much shorter because there's not that many brands in Milan for men, but I wonder if I would like to start having a chat about, is it worth it to put on a catwalk a collection that is either copied by the great designers of London and Paris or just clothes?
Well, I would say you introduced this program today as Milan, but actually, is it Milan or is it Florence?
That's a good point.
Because the fashion capitals are London, Paris, New York. Is it Milan for menswear? We think that Florence is probably more important than Milan now. And this is a very interesting tension between the two, because Milan certainly, as you were saying, is about the commercial collection, or it seems to be. But Florence and Pitti, which is the name of the shows in Florence, is certainly more newsworthy.
Well, let me just give a little bit of historical reference here, because Pitti, and especially Pitti Uomo, because that's how Pitti was born, used to be the trade show. So some brands, the most classical tailors a la Zegna at the time or Canali, they used to show there, and there were presentations, and they aspired to go to Milan because Milan was the fashion show, okay? Now is the fashion show still relevant? We don't know. However, what Mr. Napoleone, Raffaello Napoleone, has done with Pitti is a great job, because he has started a few years ago, or a few seasons ago, to invite great talents from abroad, so non-Italian designer, a la J.W. Anderson last season, this season Virgil Abloh from Off-White. And that has made the press, the cool press, the public, the people move to Pitti, move to Florence, much more than at the time where it was more the buyers. So now the press goes to Florence. And so in that sense, you're very right by saying that maybe it's becoming more important than Milan.
Yeah. Well, sorry, little sort of history discussion now. Well, the reason that Italy is so important for clothing in general, and clothing manufacture and fabrics and everything, is that every small centre in Italy, whether it was Milan, whether it was Naples, whether it was Venice, all had a speciality for manufacturing. And amazingly enough, that continued till after the Second World War. When we talk about high fashion was really in Rome, and it stayed in Rome for a very long time. Alta Moda. But then what happened with Florence, which was maybe the center of the manufacturing side, they wanted to attract people and international buyers, particularly American buyers, after the Second World War. And Giovanni Giorgini was the person who invited everybody from abroad, and he did a very famous show at this place called the Sala Bianca.
In Florence?
In Florence. The reason we call it Pitti is because it's the Pitti Palace, which is the huge palace in Florence. And he did a fashion show there with Simonetta, Fabiani, Fontana, all these great labels of haute couture. And it was not only about the clothes, but they had the most fabulous weekend with the most wonderful food, and it was a gala show, long white gloves, tiaras, the whole thing. So Italian fashion, and certainly Florentine Italian fashion, was always about the big party as well as the clothes. And I think that's the thing that they're doing now as well. It's not only the fashion shows that you see there, it's the whole big event. And certainly if you look at online, there's so many sort of street style things about the guys who hang out at Pitti.
At Florence,
and
yes.
you know, that's just as important as the shows. And sadly, Milan became important
Thanks
in the
to George.
60s and 70s.
Probably Giorgio Armani.
Giorgio Armani,
ready-to-wear.
Versace, all those amazing designers from the 70s who really brought modern Italian menswear, because in Florence itself, the brands which existed were the more menswear brands which existed were more traditional. For example, like Brioni,
Yeah.
you know, Tusardi, they were all centered in Florence. So it's strange how the important position of where to be changes within Italy. I mean, you could say that...
Yeah, probably it's also because I mix up a little bit with women's, and so, you know, Milan, thanks also to Armani, has become then, or Gianni Versace, the center of Italian fashion. But what you say, it's very important, and I actually didn't know that Pitti, it's called Pitti because it started actually at Palazzo Pitti.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks to this gentleman.
Giorgini.
And who was he? I mean, was he a designer or was he?
No. He basically was a PR.
Okay.
He was a PR
So Deus ex machina.
who pulled everybody together. And I remember talking to Simonetta.
Gianfilippo.
Simonetta, who was a designer in the 1950s, and she was one of the first designers. I think they showed there. It was you know, in the post-war Italian Renaissance. I think it was in 1949, the first show which was done there. And she said, you know, it was this extraordinary show and it was glamorous and wonderful. She said, but Italy was so poor, we had to sell abroad. We certainly didn't see our own futures in Italy. We saw our own futures in America. And
so it was just after the Second World War where Italy got
a
big defeat.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That was very interesting.
Yeah, and it's so funny because, you know, obviously the unification of Italy was a long time ago, but each region is still incredibly competitive.
Yeah,
you know,
the accents and the way of
Torino
talking shows,
versus Milano versus Rome versus. You know.
But Florence, as you said, and all the Tuscan region is still today the center of leather manufacturing. So all the leather goods.
And a funny story about that. Sorry, this is not what we're supposed to be talking about.
It's okay. It's okay.
That in fact, the people who worked in the leather industries were the same people who worked in the hat industries, because in the autumn time, when the reeds were all cut from the in Livorno, then during the winter they would plait the straws to make the hats. And then when it came around to springtime, when the hats had been sold, then they worked on the leather goods. So it was actually the same group of workers who worked on both products.
So they knew how to manufacture both?
Yeah.
I'm learning so much today.
All based in Florence.
Great. Well, talking about hats, before going into the actual fashion, can we
so this is
tell us something about your hat?
This is a hat from Milan. I need to change it. Ooh, hang on. This is a hat from one of my hats.
Florence.
And this is woven in Florence, yeah.
Okay, but it's yours. That's your design, because I remember...
We still buy all our straws in Florence. You know, it's such a huge centre for hat making in Italy too, and all accessories.
But the bad news is that I'm going back to Milan now, so maybe you want to change your hat again, or you want to keep this one?
No,
okay.
No. You're asking too much.
So Milan, I think Milan had a standout, and it was Fendi, which was a little bit surprising, not because there's anything against Fendi, but I really thought that Silvia Venturini did a fantastic show, and she had this irony in her notes, and I didn't read the notes, but I read about what she said. It was this executive Milanese office man who actually needs to dress from the top up, because you don't really see when he's in Skype meeting his bottom. And so she did this mixed between, not classic, but formal wear and sportswear. That was a little bit of a take on the fact that sportswear is ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and she made it into formal. So what do you think?
I love it. It looks so Italian.
She's called Fendi.
Yeah. Remember when we were reviewing London and we talked about Charles Jeffrey? It looks so London. This looks so Italian.
And that's bad or good for you?
I think it's good. In a funny way, you want, when you buy clothes from a particular place, you want it to look like that. I'm not saying that you don't want surprises. And in fact, there were many, many surprises in this show. Actually, the thing that I really saw about it was the lack of black. When you look at collections from all around the world, there's so much menswear is done in black and dark grey and dark navy, and all of this was very sort of softly coloured between beige and cream and brown and some dark red.
Well, I must say that it's true that white has had a big role in fashion for women's in the past 2-3 years, happily for me, because as you know, I wear a lot of white. And I think that has moved a little bit into men's, and black probably, especially for men, it's too formal. So especially when you want to do, you know, more or less modern tailoring, playing with beige and creams and soft colors makes it immediately more modern.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a look. But what I loved about this show, there really was something for everybody.
Yes.
I mean, Fendi is a huge brand, so therefore it does have to have something for everybody. You know, it's like Kim Jones at Louis Vuitton Men's. You know, in a way, it has to have something for everybody because they're selling all over the world in so many different climates. And I love the fact that it's got fur and shorts and ties and casual things, and there's a little bit of everything.
Fendi fur sells.
But the really clever thing, and it's so well edited and styled, is that the whole thing hangs together and it looks like one show. I mean, there's other shows that you can look at which looks as though it's 5 different shows put together.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because I think this show shows maturity. Silvia Venturini knows what she stands for, and she knows what the brand stands for. And also, one other thing that I really liked in this show is that for once, and that was everywhere in Milan, she's not trying to be a little bit of Balenciaga, a little bit of Gosha, a little bit of Craig, a little bit of everybody else. It's, as you said, very Italian. There is this funny way of putting either a tie and a suit jacket with Bermudas and flip-flops, or vice versa. And I think that's her way to say, you know, whatever, then you wear it the way you want.
Making it look convincing. I mean, if a British designer was to do that, it would just look like dressing up or drag or something.
Would it?
Yes.
Because of the look of the...
I don't know, there's something about, there's an authority in these clothes, which I can't put my finger on because I'm not Italian. But it's there. It's just so convincing.
Do you work with any Italian brands?
Not really. It's always been impossible for me because, I mean, even though I work with Moschino, but that's Jeremy Scott, just because of the timing, because normally in women's, if we're doing London and then all the Paris fittings are during Milan. So
for couture?
No, for during ready-to-wear shows. So it's almost impossible for me to work in Italy. And
and you're not Italian, as you said.
And I'm not Italian. I mean, I get
you work for a big French brand. But we'll talk about that when we get to, in a few weeks, discuss couture.
But, you know, it's funny because when I was talking before about the brand and the clothes, that whole experience of Italian fashion and going to Pitti, I mean, I remember going to, years and years ago, going to a Dries van Noten show there, which was extraordinary, and the RAF showed there as well. It's the whole experience, you know, that sounds really naff to say so, but that whole Dolce Vita experience is as important as the clothes are.
Yeah, I take it. I think it's disappearing a little bit in Italy. But, you know, I think Milan is a little bit sad at the moment.
I mean, certainly as being the powerhouse of the commercial manufacturing of 80% of the world's high fashion, Italy's having huge problems because people are not buying fashion in the way that it once did. And certainly, you know, the expertise of Italy is in suiting and in tailoring. Yes, they can make sportswear as well, but, you know, the extraordinary factories of Armani, of Brioni,
and that's why
Cerruti.
All the people that were doing this, you know, jumpsuit and sportswear, because that's what's in fashion, were looking a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah, because what they make is the most amazing, beautiful knitwear, or the most exquisitely made trousers, or a jacket which hangs perfectly.
Yeah, or leather goods. I mean, Italy is especially known for leather goods.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's move on from Fendi. I mean, there are other things. I've seen that banana on the bag. There would be so much to discuss, but we don't have enough time. I would like to mention Versace, and I would like to mention Versace because, as we know, it's the 20th anniversary of the tragic death of Gianni. And Donatella did something very sweet. First by, as she said, and as she was saying on the invitation, inviting people back home. So she staged the show in the courtyard of Palazzo Versace in Via Gesù. And that's not where the shows have taken place recently. And it was apparently for the press and the buyers quite emotional to go back there and stepped onto the Medusa, which is where, you know, Gianni found the Medusa there and it made it into the symbol of the house, whatever. And then she staged a show where she went back to some staples of what Gianni did. So there's some hints to remind people of his legacy, which is still huge in fashion, but moving it on, you know, forward into something relevant to today and what she is. But the biggest sign of the presence of Gianni were the black headbands on the heads of the female, the girls, the women, which took us back to his famous last couture show. So it was quite a strong statement. And then also she said she was very, she really wanted to say that this was not the pre-collection for women, but it was a capsule collection to complement the men's collection. And we can see it here, 4 and 5. So you can see that, you know, she used the same fabric, she used the same style. And I think it was a very interesting Versace collection. And again, very wearable and very sellable.
Yeah. Interesting about the men's and the women's and the fact that it was a capsule collection, because of course every company which has multiple shops basically has to have a new collection. We see collections 4 times a year, for example, you know, spring, summer, autumn and winter, but in reality they're probably getting a new delivery once a month or once a fortnight. So absolutely there is space to have a little capsule collection which corresponds with the men's. Again, with this collection, and it's so interesting, this is what happens in Italy. The way that the collection is done, the running order of it, if we scroll through the collection, you can see the progression of color. So say, for example, right at the beginning where there's the red, and then there's less and less red, or more red, and then it blends into the next color. You know, it's very beautifully edited. My favorite clothes in this came slightly later when they have a really great mixture of the famous Versace prints and in the tweeds. Here we are.
There it is, the silks, the printed silks.
I mean, I love that middle outfit here with half coloured, half black and white with the checks going on as well. I would wear that, certainly.
Yeah, and you would look fantastic in it. I see a lot of Gianni inspiration here, which absolutely is what it was all about, actually. So,
you know, if I'm going to Versace, I want to see Versace. I don't want to see somebody else, which is why I like this collection, because it looked like one of his.
And I think Donatella did that well in women's and men's.
What she didn't put in was all like the heavy leather jackets and the studding and everything like that, which is more of a winter collection anyway.
Yeah. But that's very much in tune with Palazzo Versace.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a question, because in the last head-to-head, when we were discussing London, you really couldn't stand the rose logo of Martin Rose on the belts. And here we've seen 2 outstanding T-shirts, one pink and one blue with the Versace logo. And apparently it's been all over the net, it's been all over Instagram, and it's going to sell like hot bread. What do you think about that?
Well, it's Versace. Do I need to say anything else? No, because it's Versace. And also,
so is it what the logo means, or the fact that it's a logo?
And also that's the early, I don't think this is a current logo, this is the early 80s logo when he first started the company.
Yeah, that's the Gianni's logo.
Yeah.
So you would wear the T-shirt with Versace written on your chest?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily in seriousness, but...
Tongue-in-cheek.
But slightly tongue-in-cheek, as it's ridiculous for a 60-year-old man to be wearing logos. But so why is one logo acceptable and another logo
not
not
I'm interested in hearing that.
Because I feel that if you're starting off your own young company, why would you want to use a cipher or a code from a previous generation? Which is a bit difficult to say, considering that other people have been using Vivienne Westwood and something like that.
Yeah.
But there's just something about it that personally I feel I don't like. But Versace is such an iconic brand. It's like if Raf was to put Calvin Klein on something, if Versace, if you almost to wear Armani, it's such a, in a funny way, a very camp point of view. Maybe that's the understand.
No, I see what you mean, and I understand that you say, if you're an iconic brand, then you can. I think that the young do it either ironically or because it's a trend and because it sells. And as you and I have been saying a lot of time, these people still need to make money. Do I like a logo? No, I wouldn't wear a Versace logo as much as a Chanel or a Martin Rose one, but that's personal. It's not an ideological statement. But apparently it sells well, and that Versace pink and blue T-shirt has been seen on Celebrity, on Instagram, and everywhere. So
I mean, this is great, and I love these too. He said, trying to change the subject. I know I'm on sticky ground.
And to go on to a less iconic brand, but a young designer who's, I think, going from strength to strength. I would like to have a few words on Damir Doma show. Probably Damir is less known by some people, but he's been now showing in Milan for a few seasons, probably 2 years, 3 years. Great designer, great school, great references, and I think him, like some designer did in London here, showed maturity. And in a way, when people say, what he said was, I wanted to get rid of gimmicks. I wanted to be real. I wanted to show clothes that people can wear, which is, again, a way to say I wanted to sell clothes. But why not? I think when they do this, then they actually do well. And I think here he showed that he's a master of color. He used to be much more minimal. He has moved on a little bit by his strong, severe minimalism to something that mix a little bit minimalism with some eccentricity, if we can call it like this. What do you think?
Well, the color is really, really beautiful, and I really like the collection. But however, I couldn't believe that you were saying about gimmicks, and we were scrolling past the lacing, which is about as much of a gimmick as you could possibly get. But
really?
Yeah.
But look at this chemise dress with sneakers. It's beautiful. It looks as if that girl is walking in the street.
Thing, and I love the suit on the right as well, which with this sort of slightly asymmetric cut to it in the colour. I have to say it wasn't my favourite collection.
Of Damir or of Milan?
Of Milan.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Wasn't my favourite either, but it was one of my favourite of his. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, there were a lot of girls in it, and what I liked is that sometimes I didn't even notice it was a girl. So I'm a fan of this gender fluid, tendency more than trend that is everywhere, and that you can see on people in the streets. And here, I think it was very well done. It was very fluid and it was very blurred.
Yeah, and for me, looking at all of this, it was a major colour story. You can see in these going through it very well put together in the running order. But individually, the garments I don't understand so well.
Okay. So you think it's more of a styling exercise than a
I think the collection is
exercise?
really well put together, but I don't understand the point he's trying to make.
Okay. Well, it's funny because I do follow Damir more than other young people, and maybe because in Milan
I probably
he brings
need to be educated about
fresh hair. And by the way, there is another trend in his show that was quite ubiquitous all over the world. It's street casting, or mixing with street and professional models. And what I like about that is that it makes it look like it's clothes worn in the street. And that, I think, for young people that buy fashion is very important because it resonates to them. It makes it look possible more than a very styled look on a perfectly looking model.
Yeah, I mean, because if everybody, in a fashion show, if everybody looks the same, sort of what's the point? It's the variety, which is always interesting.
Yeah. It's not, it's not very diverse, but there is a variety, let's put it like this. I wanted to say a word about Prada before then moving on to, again, going back to Florence. I was on the panel for the Prada show, so I'm not going to repeat what I said. But apart from this jumpsuit that was probably the protagonist of Miuccia's shows, I was a little bit underwhelmed. I thought, and I was a little bit criticized for this, but I thought that it wasn't a Miuccia show. It was a show that was trying to be, and I hate saying that for her because it's certainly wrong, and we're talking about the great Miuccia Prada.
That's fine, share with the group, it's only between us.
Yes, it was like trying to be in trend more than bringing fashion forward every time she does something Miuccia. Did you have a look at it? Have you?
Yeah.
What are your?
I really liked it.
Okay. Why?
Again, because as in Fendi, there was a real authority to it. There was, a singularity of purpose. I understood what it was about. The whole concept. I mean, I like the reference. I love the cartoon, the manga reference. I think the colors worked really well. The red was amazing. I thought it was an extremely good show. And, what I love about it, I can see those clothes and I know how they will look in the shop, and they will look perfect and they will be beautifully made, and there's a certain level of quality. So I don't know, in many different ways, it's a great experience.
Do you think the Prada jumpsuit will be a thing?
Yeah.
Do you think they will produce it and put it in the store? Because they're not very well known to put in stores.
I think they will produce it, but it'll be in London, Milan, Rome, Paris.
In the
New York.
flagships.
Yeah, in the main ones.
Will we see boys going around in a Prada jumpsuit?
Yeah, I mean, people wear jumpsuits at the moment, women wear jumpsuits. I'm not sure how many boys you're going to see walking around in little shorts like that, especially in red. But they are like boxer shorts, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't say I dislike this show, but I don't recognize Prada. Because, I mean, I'm a fan of Prada, but
So is Prada therefore looking, has your eye become used to the Prada look then,
it might
do you think?
That's a very good point. Because
I think it is.
What I was going to say is that especially when I see Prada's men, I see the how great she is, She always managed to change the ideas and keeping this look that it's Prada and it couldn't be anything else.
Yes.
Is that having an eye that it's used to it?
Yes. I mean, I think that Prada now is a little bit like Saint Laurent was in Paris in the 70s or the early 80s. Our idea of what fashion actually is, so much of it now comes from what Miuccia Prada has done over the past 25 or 30 years.
Absolutely.
So in a way, our vision of what fashion is has shifted, and that's what we think is sort of more normal in the way that Saint Laurent was doing a navy blue suit with gold buttons. In a way that was more classic, but that's what we thought that fashion was about and how people should look. And we think that people should sort of look like this now. So yes, I think I understand what you're saying, but that is such a great suit on the right.
But
with
I
the
was going
shoe.
to say, now this page that we're showing now, for me, that's Prada.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once I see that those incredible two suits with those shoes and that look and that double, I think I'm not sure there is layering or it's a double color, but yeah, that's Prada, that's Miuccia at her best.
I mean,
I didn't think the show was like this. The
strange thing about the previous outfits we were looking at, the the look came from the combination and the styling of those simpler elements individually, and back further. Individually, those last suits had more design in a funny way to them. Whereas, for example, you could say, well, that's a plain, simple pair of grey trousers. I mean, it isn't, but...
It isn't, yeah.
Yeah. I love the show.
Well, that's good. It's good that we don't all think the same. Let's move back to or on to Florence. So PT invited Virgil Abloh of White to be the special guest, and he staged a show with Jenny Holzer. So during a 1 hour wait, there were words about or inspired by the Syrian war on the wall by Jenny Holzer. So my first question for you is, do you agree that we make quite superficial fashion? I mean, fashion can be superficial with a topic as serious as a war?
Yeah, I mean, fashion always has, I'm sure I said this last time, fashion, if it does not fit into the times and have a political point of view, is sort of just clothes.
Couldn't agree more.
And important fashion, and when fashions change, it's because it's linked to politics or current events. Yes, in a way it is dealt with things superficially, but to communicate an idea, to get it across cultural boundaries, language barriers, fashion can do that communication in a way that politicians cannot.
I agree with the principle, so maybe I should put it in a different way. Virgil has always declared that his fashion is for millennials, and he's very keen in creating images for them to feed their need of, posting and getting inspired, etc., etc. So I think that you can be that political if you are Rick Cohen, for instance. I mean, if there is something that it's in your DNA, and again, the war is not making fun of Trump. The war is people fleeing. And I don't want to be demagogic here, but what I'm trying to say is that probably the fashion of Off-White, which I love, and which is very young and it's very fresh, and it has created this imagery exactly for millennial, which he says and repeats all the time. Maybe I don't think it should be linked to.
Do you think he's treating it in too superficial way?
Maybe yes. Maybe yes. Maybe I'm being a little bit conservative here.
I'm just thinking, I don't know why this came into my mind. I remember maybe 10 years ago, there was an exhibition of Kylie Minogue clothes in the V&A, and the V&A came into, there's huge controversy about it. This was even before social media.
Kylie Minogue clothes?
Yeah, and it was, there were all these letters to the Times, letters to the Telegraph. Why are Kylie's gold hot pants in a museum?
Yeah.
And the director of the museum said, we already have the museum goers. What we need is all those people who've never been to a museum in their lives. We need them to be, because they're the next generation of people.
So you're telling me that Virgil is educating young people?
So yes, he's making them, maybe 1% of them, he's making them think. I mean, clothing can do so many different things. It can protect you from the elements, it can make you look glamorous, it can make you, but if it's actually making you think, maybe it's about love, and maybe it's about hate, but if he's associating his brand with that, well, why not? I think it's a good thing. A similar thing was for the first season of Dior, Maria Grazia used the we should all be feminists.
It's different. Ideology is not war for me. It's the Syrian war that for me, I don't know. I think it's
I beg to differ. I think it's exactly the same thing. It's using clothing as a political tool, or just sending a message.
I'm not against that. I mean, we've got the greatest of all time. I mean, Vivian, to mention another one who's been political or like. But I think what I love about Off-White is the actual clothes. I think he's a great image maker.
I mean,
he's an amazing image maker.
Do the clothes actually need the political thing? I don't think they do need, but that's how he chooses to market them.
Well, some argued that maybe it was to hide the fact that the collection was weak. I don't think the collection is weak. I don't think he has invented anything. I don't think he's one of those designers that reinvent the silhouettes and the tailor and whatever, but he puts together great looks, he puts together great imagery, and
he's an art director.
He's an amazing art director, and today that's probably very important in fashion. So I absolutely love this show, and I love what he does. I think there is a little bit of appropriation. People are very quick in yelling appropriation, you know, as soon as the some themes of, you know, some cultures are touched. But then here, nobody said it's appropriating. So anyway, you disagree, so
yes, I mean, everything's appropriated from everything.
Yeah.
Whether it's artistic, cultural, racial, you know,
and also his fashion appropriates some trends that we've seen elsewhere before, but it does it beautifully. And it's quite a fresh way to do fashion, which I appreciate.
That's the world we live in now. I mean, it's... even I remember, talking about appropriation, I remember when I was working at Givenchy years and years ago, that I think it was in either in Menswear Daily or the International Herald Tribune, that when they were reviewing the Givenchy show in 1962, it said, 1964, I think it was, it said, it looked very Givenchyarga.
Oh, wow. Did they use that word?
Yes. because Givenchy was a protege of Balenciaga.
Yeah.
So, you know, that appropriation is always going on, but some, you know, he gives
But it's also true that there are some designers that create the references and some designers that take the references, or some others that abuse the references.
You know, even when we, I mean, I don't want to make another history lesson, but even when we say Balenciaga, you know, or so many of his references came from Spanish paintings. Yeah. You know, Zurbarán or Murillo, or, you know.
But I once read the quote of a scientist that I, of course, don't remember who it was, but he was saying, we should stop talking about copying, because science wouldn't move forward if there weren't scientists before. So everybody builds on something that existed before, and that's the same thing in art and in fashion. But it's also true that some designers are not great designers and they don't reference, but they copy.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
Some others they reference, or they, you know, they appropriate in.
And even great designers reference or copy.
Yeah, but then they give them their own style, their own take of it, their own, you know, way to do it. And I think Virgil is one of those. He's been attacked a little bit for that. I think he does it well, and I think he is very important in this moment, because he gives young people something that they really want and need, and he does it in a funny way.
I mean, it's a bit like Gosha. You know, there's a generation of him and Gosha. You know, there's things taken. It's the sort of magpie eye to make something which sort of feels contemporary but
and
not
relevant.
Threatening and relevant.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Gosha, but I'm less of a fan than Virgil. But probably it's more of an aesthetic thing. This is more something that appeals to me aesthetically than, you know, the Soviet kind of poor look of Gosha, which I find it a little bit more harder.
Even with, I mean, he came under real flack this season for doing things with Burberry.
Yeah, that was a very interesting one. I mean, we can have two words about that. What do you think about Christopher being sitting front row at the Gosha show and the total look with a Burberry check coming out suddenly, which was rather kitsch, but
yeah, it is good. I I like the show. I mean, I like
Was that
it.
ironical or serious? That look, the Burberry look.
I think Gosha was these past 2 or 3 shows that he's done have been also about football, because he's sponsored and does collaboration with Adidas. And of course, the football hooligan thing, which is why they stopped doing the Burberry caps and all those Burberry.
So it was a tongue-in-cheek reference to the chav.
Yeah.
But so why does Burberry do it?
I think because they want to do something which is young and fun. And I'm sure for Christopher at this point, it's like, why the hell not? Because I'm sure he's done enough variations on trench coats for forevermore.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he probably
that's
prefer
the
to
danger.
do something a little bit
That's
different.
the danger. As much as I think that he's done amazing things, I found that a little bit desperate. Can we really conclude on this note?
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.